Well, good morning. My name's Josh McKoon. I'm running for Secretary of State. Just to give you a little bit of my personal background, what I hope to accomplish, and why I think I'm your best choice in the May 22nd Republican primary. My family moved to Georgia because my great-grandfather had a job opportunity to work at the Eagle and Phoenix Textile Mill in downtown Columbus, Georgia. He worked in that mill for 50 years. My grandfather dropped out of school in the 8th grade during the Depression to help take care of our family. He worked a lot of odd jobs until World War II broke out. He enlisted in the Army, served in the Pacific, came home after the war ended, married my grandmother who worked at commercial printers. He was a milkman, he was a railroad conductor. Eventually he and my grandmother saved up enough money to open a little grocery store at 5th Avenue and 8th Street in downtown Columbus. They had a lot of small businesses over the years. One of my earliest childhood memories is of refilling the Coca-Cola machine with my granddad at the laundromat, which was the last small business they owned and operated. They were very entrepreneurial people. My dad was the first member of our family to go to college. He went to Auburn University, worked at that same Eagle and Phoenix Textile Mill in the summertime to earn tuition. I followed in his footsteps, and you know they say in politics to get the negative stuff out early, so I'll go ahead and tell you I went to Furman University for my undergraduate degree, and I went to the University of Alabama for law school. And you know, John Barrow, who's a likely Democratic nominee in this election, called me out on Twitter and said, I hope everybody's rooting for Georgia in the national championship game, even Josh McKoon who went to Alabama. And I told him, I said, I've been a lifelong Georgia fan. I'm pulling for Georgia, and I didn't even have to ask Nancy Pelosi permission. I haven't heard back from Congressman Barrow since then. But why am I running for Secretary of State? I'm running for Secretary of State to make Georgia the fastest state in the nation to get a job and the toughest state in the nation to cast an illegal vote. It's just that simple. You know, I've been here to Glynn County several times. It's good to see so many friends here. Senator William Ligon has been supportive of my campaign and endorsed my candidacy for Secretary of State. Your sheriff, Sheriff Jump, who I've worked with on a number of law enforcement issues, is also supporting me in this campaign. And I think it's because of the vision we're outlining, which is really to do two things. When we talk about making Georgia the fastest state in the nation to get a job, what we're talking about is licensing reform. We have 41 licensed occupations. It takes 350 days on average in this state for a cosmetologist to get their license. 350 days. An EMT who is trained to give life-saving aid in the event of a medical emergency, on average, only spends 31 days in training. There's something profoundly wrong with that system. We need to streamline licensing. We need to get the government out of the way and connect people to the dignity of honest, hard work. When it comes to election reform, we need to work on voting technology. I agree with what Secretary Kemp said. We've got to work with local officials because it's not one election conducted. It's 159 elections being run by local boards of elections and probate judges all over the state. And we need that input as we make a decision on what new technology to adopt. But you know, it would be valuable to have somebody with a background in election law. I've been in private law practice for the last 15 years. I've worked election law cases. I've litigated election contests. I've litigated ballot access issues. You need somebody who's able to walk in on day one and do this job and handle the legal challenges that we're having. Because the left knows they're not going to change Georgia election law at the General Assembly. So they're trying to change it in federal court instead. So having somebody with that background is critically important. It's something we're going to do. We're going to fight the attempts of the left to force counties and municipalities around the state to print ballots in foreign languages. That's just wrong. You have to learn English to become a citizen through the naturalization process. Why would we print ballots in foreign languages? So there are a number of other challenges we could talk about. You heard about absentee ballot reform. That's very important as well. But when we talk about accomplishing these jobs, the fundamental question you've got to answer between now and May 22nd is who is that right choice in the Republican primary? I'll give you a couple quick reasons. I mentioned already, I'm the only one in this race with a background in Georgia election law that's ready to do the job from day one. John Barrow's going to be the Democratic nominee in this race. He got elected against Republicans in districts designed to elect Republicans. You need the A-team out there. You need somebody who can prosecute the case against John Barrow, let the public know he voted for Nancy Pelosi for Speaker, he voted with Barack Obama 85% of the time. And finally, you need somebody who has the backbone to do what needs to be done. As a legislator, I got ethics reform passed to put the first limit on lobbyist gifts to members of the General Assembly in this state. Many of you know about our battle for religious freedom and the battle we're facing this year to just give you the opportunity to vote on a ballot question to make English the official language of state government. The best indicator of future performance is your prior record. look at the last 7 years, you'll see you can count on me to do the right thing, even if it's politically difficult. Vote Josh McKoon May 22nd in the Republican primary. Thank you.
Josh, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
We just had a couple of questions that the executive board sort of created to, and some of you have touched on these. And how do we prevent non-Georgia citizens from voting? We have people moving into the state. They have 2 state residences. We also have the illegal voters. Bottom line, give us a couple of ideas. Anybody want to come up here?
You know, Georgia has issued over 48,000 driver's licenses to illegal aliens, and the only distinction between that driver's license and the one you and I have are the small words limited term in black print at the top of the license. And because of the federal motor voter law, unless these individuals opt out when they're getting their driver's license, they're being added to the voter roll. So we need to take the DDS database, cross-reference it with every county list in the state, and make sure we're purging people who are illegal aliens, who not only are they not citizens, but they don't even have legal status to be in the country. We also need to cooperate with our fellow neighboring states. I've talked to John Merrill, the Secretary of State in Alabama, about interstate cooperation and sharing voter data, because the issue you raise about multiple registrations, people are very mobile today, they move around. We need to make sure that if there's a Josh McKoon registered in more than one state, that he's only voting in the state where he actually resides. And we can do that through better cooperation between states. And finally, we need to work on, frankly, eliminating people who are deceased. You know, there needs to be a better system, and we need to give more resources to county boards of elections to be able to do that in cooperation with the Secretary of State's office, because it is about cleaning up the voter list. We want everybody to vote. I want everybody who's eligible to vote to register and participate in our democratic process. But every person who votes illegally, it's like taking your vote away. So it is incredibly important that we secure that process, and I believe I've got the legal background to do it. Thank you.
There is also a bill dropping for the return of paper ballots in Georgia. Do you support paper versus machine?
I think we have to be very careful about anything that we pass into the law, because that handcuffs local officials and state officials. You know, we're about to have a big turnover. We're going to have a new governor next year. We're going to have a new Secretary of State. I've said over and over again, I think we need a paper-based process that is verifiable through an audit process. But we shouldn't try to pick a vendor. We shouldn't try to pick winners and losers by legislating. We need to have that communication, particularly again with local boards of elections and probate judges, because they're conducting the election. You know, Secretary of State sort of stands on top of this pyramid and on top of this process, but the elections are occurring in 159 different jurisdictions. And we've got to have that input as we make a decision about what technology to migrate to. And what Secretary Kemp said earlier is important as well. This is not something that turns on a dime. You know, you do not want to try to be implementing brand new voting technology when President Trump's on the ballot for re-election, because we're going to get sued. And as an election lawyer, I can tell you, you do not want to invite that kind of litigation in the midst of a presidential election year. So we got to be deliberate, we got to be thoughtful, we got to bring all the stakeholders to the table, and that's not something you can do in a single 40-day legislative cycle. That's going to take more time. So we definitely need to set a baseline. We need to make sure we have a paper-based, verifiable process. But beyond that, we need to give some room for the decision makers to be able to work with local authorities in making that decision.
How do you feel about early voting being almost, 3 weeks long?
I think that the early voting period is too long. I was the Senate sponsor of the legislation to take it down from 45 days when it was 45 days to 21. You know, I think a week is plenty of time, including a mandatory Saturday. That, along with a 45-day window for paper absentee ballots, that's plenty of opportunities for people to vote. Now, I know in some of the larger population counties, they like the idea of having time beyond that, but it's frankly an unfunded mandate on smaller counties that have to staff up for that 3-week period. So I think what we need to do is say that week with the Saturday is mandated, and then if a county wants the flexibility to go out to 3 weeks for administrative purposes, and I've talked to plenty of election superintendents that want that flexibility, I think that's fine. But I think we should not, for the convenience of a handful of large counties, tell all 159 counties you've got to pay the freight for 3 weeks of early voting when you have days that no one comes in the office at all.
First and foremost, I want to tell you that some of the counties in our county purges the list. every meeting. We have done that for a long time. However, the Secretary of State has to tell us the deceased people unless the people on the board know that they are deceased. But the question is, we have them come into our office and we have to give them a photo ID, to take a picture, and then they can take that and use it for any purpose, and that's wrong. However, when they come to vote, we check them out and we have to make sure they are eligible other ways. But I think that to offer anybody off the streets a free photo for whatever is wrong, I hope you all will address that issue.
So when we went through the litigation over the voter ID law, one of the sort of saving clauses of our statute was the ability for people to come in and get that photo identification. I'm definitely willing to work with the legislature and look for ways to make that less onerous for our local boards of election. But we need to be very careful because the allegation made by the other side was, well, what about somebody that doesn't drive or can't afford to get down to a DDS office to get just an ID? Of course, they don't just issue driver's licenses. You can get just an ID card from the Department of Driver Services. So we need to look into that, and we need to see how we can tighten that up. But at the same time, we don't want to lose the effectiveness of our voter ID law because it has been challenged multiple times. And unlike several other states that have had theirs thrown out and had to start over again, Georgia's been able to be upheld, and several of the court opinions have cited that provision as why they kept it in force.
Senator McKoon, when he was in the Senate, worked to stop the voice vote in the state Senate, and it takes 5 senators to object to that, to require the recorded vote. Is that issue still alive to stop the voice vote?
So thank you for that question. The rules of the Senate, as you correctly state, when we have floor amendments in the Senate, our process is a little bit more open than the House in terms of being able to amend bills when they come on the floor. You have a voice vote, an unrecorded voice vote, unless 5 members ask for the order for a roll call vote. So we offered a rule change to make that unanimous consent. So if any senator objected, that you could get a roll call vote. Unfortunately, that did not pass out of the Rules Committee. We haven't been able to get that changed. We have done some other things to increase transparency in our process. You know, the House for 15 years has recorded their committee meetings and made them available so you don't have to drive to downtown Atlanta. Up until last year, the Senate didn't offer that. And so they said it was too expensive to do that we didn't have the technology to do it. So I used my cell phone and I started recording the meetings and live streaming them to my Twitter page. And we suddenly found $450,000 to wire the rooms, and now this year you can actually watch those meetings. So I continue to be committed to transparency. I think we ought to have recorded votes when an amendment's offered if any senator asks, but that issue will not come back up until January of 2019 when the Senate votes on its rules.